you will by definition cross paths with those 300 people more. And so by definition, over time, you will form a relationship with them. And probably over time, some of them, not all, will feel comfortable or more confident to talk to you. And maybe at times, if you ask them, how's it going? They'll tell you, or they'll tell you some things. But what the 500 people who are not in that location with you will never have the opportunity to do is have that conversation in an informal, at the coffee machine, at the water cooler setting. You know, in exactly that point, so it creates in your business pockets of disconnection of people you can't reach or people you don't hear from. And therefore you can't create a dialogue with around what's really impacting on them and what could be a really minor thing that could have an enormous difference, you know, in terms of their productivity, their engagement with the business, their engagement with what you're trying to do as a leader. All of those various things, you've got no mechanism to understand where it's going wrong and how you can fix it.
Hey everyone, it's Amy Lynn Durham, and you're listening to Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work is on a mission to equip senior leaders with tools they need to be a true quantum leader and actually understand what that means. Improve employee engagement, retain top talent, and transform your workplace culture to have less drama and stress. So let's start making magic. Hey everyone, welcome to Create Magic at Work. Today I am speaking with Ollie Lingwood-Craddock. He is a passionate leader with a focus on growth through people. With extensive experience in scaling SaaS business models, B2B revenue growth, talent learning, ed tech sector knowledge, content development, and subscription business growth, Ollie is a sought-after speaker and thought leader in the industry. As the CEO of Rungway, Ollie is at the forefront of employee listening platforms that guide constructive conversations, enable stronger connections with leadership, and accelerate employee-based decision-making. With over 100,000 employees worldwide using the platform, Rungway is changing the way organizations manage change by providing a continuous feedback loop that fosters a psychologically safe environment for employees to speak up and contribute to creating a more open and inclusive culture. So clearly, just in reading Ollie's bio, you all can understand why he is a guest today on Create Magic at Work. Ollie, welcome to Create Magic at Work.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you. Right away, I want to hear a little bit about Rungway and what kind of inspired you to create this platform that the driving force behind it is feedback, but also feedback from a psychologically safe perspective. The reason why I'm asking you this is we kicked off season 5 with Aaron Tobacco in a 2-part series on feedback and how to give feedback at from a very elevated level with a high level of presence. So can you share with all of us what inspired you to create Rungway that offers this feedback loop, and how do you give feedback in a psychologically safe way?
So, I mean, I guess I didn't create Rungway. I'm the CEO of Rungway. So Julie, the founder, created Rungway, and it was ultimately about that psychologically safe space you talk about, and that realization that in big organizations, and this is about feedback at scale, in large organizations, individuals don't feel safe to raise their hand. And it's that kind of that metaphor of you have the louder voices you tend to hear from the same people all the time. You often have pockets of disconnection within your teams or your colleagues, your employees. If you think about companies with tens of thousands of employees, there are groups of people, whether that be locations or cohorts of people that you just don't hear from. And so to that point of how do you create safety, Rungway has technology attached to it. So it is ultimately that tech platform where people, if they want to, can post anonymously on Rungway. And so it is organic, what you hear from people. It is always there. It is happening in real time. And so what we see is that colleagues of color are 3 times more likely to post anonymously than people who look like me. And when they do post anonymously, they receive 50% more response, support, interaction from their colleagues and senior leaders. We also have seen in the APAC region that only ever have women posted anonymously. We have never had any other scenario. So people can post named if they want to. So it is ultimately, I talk to leaders a lot about they don't know what's going on in their company. The executives tend to know 4% of the issues in their business, and the employees know 100%. And as a senior person, in terms of feedback, your job is to make decisions with the right information. And therefore, if you only know 4%, it's an academic study by Sidney Yoshida. It's called the iceberg of ignorance. If you only know 4%, you can't possibly make the right decisions. You just can't it's impossible to do that. So in the kind of spirit of feedback is how do you gather that feedback effectively at scale to understand what's impacting on people on a day-to-day basis, and what you can do about it. Small changes can make a big impact.
Okay. I'm going to ask a perceivably obvious question, or might be a perceived dumb, ignorant question.
That's
Beating
right.
myself up. If the feedback is anonymous, how do you know the stats? How do you know that it's people of color? How do you know that it's women?
So when exactly, great question, right? Because it sounds counterintuitive. So we call it constructive anonymity. So on the platform, it has a feed aspect to it. I can post anonymously if I want. So it just says anonymous, and I can write my question or issue there, or it could say Ollie-Craddock. But in the back end of Rungway, we know something about me, and that could be where I am, the kind of job I do, my age maybe, or different demographics. So we can build a picture on an aggregated basis of what is emerging, as what are the trends in your business, who's impacted by it, and why, in their own words. And that's really powerful. You can act on things that are emerging when they're a spark, not a bomb. Don't let it get out of hand. Don't let it become a crisis. And so that's how it works. We never expose the individual's identity, but it means on an aggregated level, we can see what's impacting different groups of people and why.
Yeah. I was curious about that because coming from, my corporate executive life, there was always engagement surveys that came out. Many organizations do employee engagement surveys. They all the time to get a pulse of their finger on the pulse of what's going on. It never felt anonymous, right? It was always like if you put your title and where you were from, they could pretty much pinpoint who said what when they were asking for feedback. And so then the feedback is not accurate. It's not a transparent picture of what's really going on, because everyone knows, they can see this is actually me. So I'm just going to say what I'm supposed to say so I don't rock the boat, or I don't.
Exactly. And therefore
and then there's no change.
Exactly. And I think something that I would say is that, this is lots of companies do, lots of different things to kind of understand their employees and listen. And this is that. And as part of that, what that doesn't tell you in real time is the root causes of what's going on and why. And also, to your point, you don't hear the real truth from people, because people either don't engage at all, or they feel that they aren't fully safe, so can't share everything. So I completely agree with you. And therefore, kind of where Rungway plays is creating that tool that cuts through the potentially kind of structured annual type surveys and goes, right, we can help you with things that are happening right now. And therefore feedback can drive change, and can drive change quickly. And that's where that dialogue, where leaders can see what's emerging in their business, they can communicate back out on those discussions and show that they're listening, do it quickly, authentically, and show that change is happening. Or more importantly, at times say we're not doing something and this is why. And that's really important as well. But to show there is that kind of dialogue, but doing it in a one-to-many way and really time efficiently, you can create a feeling of, okay, so I have raised this. My colleagues are saying they agree with me, and I am being heard, and it's being done quickly, and it isn't taking 6 months to a year for the results to come back, and we're doing something about what you said. Because by the time you do that, the whole what is affecting individuals is completely different, and they'll have forgotten about that, and potentially have left because of it. So this is about doing more immediate things, but part of what we help clients with is not overloading them with data, but kind of telling them at any time, these are the 2 or 3 things that are really trending in your business that you should do something about.
Interesting. So my question for you is, if a leader is listening right now, what should they be? Let's say they don't have a huge organization where they maybe don't have a huge platform like Rungway. What are some things they should be looking for? How should they be asking for feedback? I'm asking because I've experienced organizational cultures where feedback was not well received if it wasn't extremely positive, kind of the toxic positivity situation. So what would you say to a leader that maybe needs to take a look in the mirror or needs to take a better look at what's going on? How could they approach that?
I think probably at an overarching level, that point you said there is quite an important one, is that if all the feedback you receive is positive, it means you're not really hearing proper feedback. I think any leader in any organization, irrelevant of its size, probably has 2 or 3 initiatives or changes they're responsible for driving. And I can guarantee at least one of them, you have a feeling it's not going well and you don't know why. And the people who do know why are your employees. So before you get to how you address that, that's really important to kind of give a sense of. It could be that you're not tapping into the reality of the day-to-day, like the issues versus that are being caused by the change you're trying to drive. It could be that people don't understand why the change is happening. Or it could be that there's some great ideas in your team, but you've got no mechanism to hear them. And so finding ways, even in smaller organizations, to hear that is really important, and giving safety. And that, obviously I would say Rungway is a great way to do that, because that's literally what we do with clients. But if you don't have a means to do that, try different things. It could be on a smaller scale, but the key is to not just ask people you see every day. So if you're in the office, say, as an example, don't just ask the people you see at the coffee machine, because they're probably people who feel comfortable to tell you something. It may not be the reality, but they will feel comfortable to do that. You need to find out from people who you don't interact with, that kind of you're outside of your normal network. You need to find mechanisms to hear from them, because something we see is when clients of ours are using Rungway to gather ideas on how maybe they could reduce complexity in an organization, people are 2 times more likely to suggest, they're 2 times more likely to post anonymously, when they suggest an idea than when they raise an issue, which sounds counterintuitive. You'd expect where you're saying, oh, there's a problem with this, people would want the safety of anonymity at that point. But actually, people are more likely to want the safety and anonymity when they're raising an idea or suggesting new approach.
Interesting.
So it's not even about feedback. People often think of feedback as negative, right? But feedback could be an idea. Feedback could be a moment where you go, that is amazing, we should change and do what you've suggested. But you're not even going to hear that if you don't have a means that people feel safe to do that.
Wow. That's incredible that people want to submit their ideas 2 times more anonymously. Yeah. Especially from a lot of the egoic spaces I've seen. Most people want credit for their ideas, but I could see the other part. Like, I feel like this is an amazing idea, and if I share it, I don't want to feel shame or bad or negative in some way if people don't like my idea. Right?
Exactly. It's that. It's exactly what if someone says it's not a good idea? How does that make me look? How would that make me feel? Or if for exactly that. I think also, that kind of in any size organization, but even in smaller ones, if you have people who do different roles, make sure that there is equity in their ability to give feedback. For an example, if you have an organization that is a manufacturing organization, say, so part of the team sit in front of a laptop in an office, and part of the team are in a manufacturing line or in a warehouse and don't have a laptop, there is an inequity there, in the sense that probably your natural mechanisms for people to give feedback are weighted towards the people who have laptops and not the people who don't have laptops. So even things like that is it doesn't have to, it maybe needs 2 mechanisms, not 1, if you have different kind of groups of people, and that makes it slightly more painful to collect that feedback. But is there a mechanism where people could do something through their mobile phone? We see, or through something in a breakout room in a kind of warehouse setup. is we with client, we have people using their own mobile devices to kind of interact and give feedback and raise ideas and issues on Rungway. They use their own mobile phones in their own time off shift. So there are lots of different ways you can do that. It isn't just it has to be in work hours. It's often people feel safer maybe when they're not at work to do that. For obvious reasons. It's probably, is someone going to look over my shoulder while I'm doing it? Versus if I'm sat in my own home, no one from work can see me.
Yeah, I think that's very profound that you're sharing that, the equity and being able to give the feedback and get it from everyone. You remind me of this story that Dana Zohar shared in her book, The Quantum Leader. It's one of the main reading recommends from Create Magic at Work. She's a philosopher and a physicist, and she pioneered a lot of the spiritual intelligence work in the workplace. And that's a story that she shares that is from a quantum leadership perspective, where a company was gathering feedback from all levels, no matter who it was. And she shared a story one time that they had a huge meeting to gather feedback. Of course, it wasn't anonymous. It was in person at the time. And the janitor shared this amazing, innovative way to fix a problem that they were experiencing and to help them kind of make this quantum leap forward, because he was included in the conversation, because he's a part of the company. He knows the mission. He knew where they were going and was a valuable part of the company to be able to, so everyone else can do their job. And yeah, I just wanted to share that because you reminded me of that. And then there was another, you mentioned the water cooler. There's another story from that. I'm on her book today for some reason, where a consulting company went into an organization to analyze and, try to make them more profitable and productive. And they said, oh, everyone's hanging out by the water cooler and they're wasting company time hanging out by the water cooler, chit-chatting. So the company went in and pulled all the water coolers out of their spaces, and their productivity went down, because what was happening was the information that was being shared in a safe space was ways to be more innovative and more productive with their job just by casually chit-chatting with each other.
Hearing what other people are doing and getting ideas from it, or learning from, exactly.
Exactly. And now we're in this remote world, right? A lot of companies are working, letting people work flexible work schedules or in hybrid ways. And I would imagine it would be hard for a leader of a large organization to try to do something in one room with everyone to collect feedback. So how does this speak to the remote worker in gathering their feedback? What's your take on all of that?
Well, I think often, and this is what I'm not saying is that water cooler conversation, if you like, whether it be virtual or literal, is not valuable. But I guess it's that inequity point, right? Because if you're the CEO of a company and you go to the office and you have 300 people who are in the office, but 500 people who are remote, or in different locations, you will by definition cross paths with those 300 people more. And so by definition, over time, you will form a relationship with them. And probably over time, some of them, not all, will feel comfortable or more confident to talk to you. And maybe at times, if you ask them, how's it going? They'll tell you, or they'll tell you some things. But what the 500 people who are not in that location with you will never have the opportunity to do is have that conversation in an informal, at the coffee machine, at the water cooler setting. In exactly that point, so it creates in your business pockets of disconnection of people you can't reach or people you don't hear from. And therefore you can't create a dialogue with around what's really impacting on them and what could be a really minor thing that could have an enormous difference, in terms of their productivity, their engagement with the business, their engagement with what you're trying to do as a leader, all of those various things. You've got no mechanism to understand where it's going wrong and how you can fix it, because you're not casually having the conversation with them and assuming people will share that with you as well. And we've worked with organizations where we see the spread as you go away from a head office is increases the likelihood on Rungway of people using anonymity because they feel less safe. Which is exactly the point, that people feel, if I was the CEO of a business in that I just described, well, people probably would think, well, I know Ollie, I can speak to him. The dreaded statement I might say is, well, my office door is always open. And I smile when managers say that, because how many people ever walk through your office door and speak to you? It's implied that everybody queues up at the door and is very comfortable speaking to you. No one ever does it. And so it's that great example of how, even with, probably as you go further from your desk or office, it probably is, people feel less and less safe. And that could be just the nature of the people you work with every day versus the people you don't contact in a kind of regular basis.
Okay. So if I'm someone that has sort of been in the system and followed the leadership advice of others I've seen, I'm leading a large team, and I'm like, hey, my phone's always on, my door's always open, if you need to let me know something. What is a different way I can approach that?
I mean, without me saying you need to get Rungway, I think, I mean, that is one way. But I think ultimately you need to find ways to create channels that people will access, that are easy for them to access, and they feel that they can tell you what's going well and what's not going well, and raise ideas that are against what you're trying to achieve. And that is not just about sitting there and waiting for that kind of feedback and to start, but it could be that you're asking questions. You could be going, these are the three priorities I've got at the minute, and involve people in that. What do you see as the problem with that? How could we do it differently? If you get people bought in, and there could be different ways of doing that, you will be able to ensure that your change is more successful, because you will remove those pockets of disconnection. You'll understand the reality. You'll be able to adjust your plans to fit the reality, which makes them more likely to succeed. People will be bought in, less likely to be resistant, and therefore more likely to help it make it happen. That's very generic statements, and there are tools. Rungway would help you do that, obviously, but maybe in a business that is 50 people, there are probably ways, but you need to work really hard in how you communicate. You need to be very authentic. You need to be very transparent. You need to be very honest. You need to show where it's not going well and talk very openly about that. And so that hopefully people start to feel that they can be open back with you as well. It is not kind of corporate style broadcast communications is not going to work to gather that feedback. You need to speak to people in a very human way.
Yeah.
And do it repeatedly. It's a muscle you need to develop. You need to do it repeatedly, more than you feel you should, because what is going on, your three key initiatives, and the reason why. Saying it once to people, no one will remember that. Everyone will forget that. And I've worked with clients at the minute who are going through big transformations, and what we've identified is there has been a problem in how they've communicated, because they communicated about it once, told everyone the why, and then have gone since, well, why doesn't everyone understand? It's like, well, because but they've forgotten what you said, and probably instantly have been worrying about themselves, and you need to keep reminding people and taking them on the journey. And that could be through lots of different channels, depending on what the nature of the organization. It could be you talking to people, it could be you sending videos out, it could be doing kind of conversations over lunch, through to giving channels where people can feel they can do that, kind of raise their hand in a way where they're not going to be, there's no consequences for them.
Yeah, one thing that you said back in the beginning of our conversation reminded me of when you were talking about, I mean, I'm not quoting you, but it was the energy I got was, when leaders are frustrated with their teams, if they're not getting results, but then they're not getting accurate feedback either. And what I've experienced and seen quite a bit is if somebody just isn't doing the job, then they just get rid of them. And it's this like, get rid, replace, get rid of them, replace, get rid of them, replace. And it's never, and so I guess I just want to speak to that and call that out, that maybe that might not be the answer. And maybe instead of getting rid, if you put your ego aside and tap into your inner voice and your inner wisdom when you're approaching conversations, that's a big part of all of this. You have to, everything that you just said, the leader that's going to operate in that way, that's going to go out and ask questions and have these conversations, they're going to have to be operating from their inner wisdom and their inner compassion. And they're going to have to put their ego aside while they're doing it, which are 3 skills of spiritual intelligence: awareness of ego and higher self, seeking guidance from higher self, operating from higher self as a leader. So I just wanted to speak to that as you were sharing that, because it's going to take, and you can comment on this, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. It definitely takes someone that is willing to practice that. It's not something you're going to get right every day, like you were saying, but it's a daily practice, and it's a life journey as well. Are there leaders that you see that are willing to step into this and do that kind of work, and why should they?
I see that there are, and I guess a word I would add to what you described in those kind of 3 areas would be about being vulnerable as well, which is brave, but I do, don't get it right all the time, but I do
That's
think
the change
helps
agent,
as well.
Right? The bravery.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
And I think
just
that
hit me with that.
Yeah, having to be brave and kind of all that comes with that is hopefully it makes you more authentic, because it is often I see people giving this impression that everything is perfect all the time, and not, and I think actually that's very rare. Most of the time we're, you make mistakes, and hopefully that's where you learn, right? You learn from where things don't work, and therefore you learn not to do that again.
That's where the innovation comes from in quantum leadership is the mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of test and, that iterative test and learn mindset is definitely something I would kind of link to what you described. I think in terms of, do I see leaders who would buy into that? Yeah, completely. You can spot them very quickly in terms of the phraseology they use, and often in the sense of feedback is in terms of, do they understand that they have these kind of pockets of not disconnection to people? Do they understand the reality of what that means, and do they understand the negative impacts of that? If they don't, then they are not what you've just described often. If they do understand that, and they do understand they therefore aren't connected into people and people's feelings, sentiment, the issues, what the blind spots that creates for them, which means that they can't do a great job, and therefore they can't help people do a great job, which ultimately impacts on the business or organization. That's what I see. The people I speak to do understand that. Definitely. And I think you can spot them very quickly if they don't buy into that.
Yeah, really, really good. I think the question that we could all ask ourselves is, where are we closed off to hearing feedback in our lives, in our work? Where can I look for that? Where's that shadow? And how can I open myself up to that with a high level of presence and non-judgment of the person bringing the feedback, or if I'm sharing feedback as well. And what does it look like around me? What does it feel like everything's perfect, or is everyone just telling me everything's perfect? And which one am I leaning into? Which feeling am I leaning into? Because if everyone's telling me everything's perfect and I'm being avoidant when I hear that, because we know everything's not perfect. And I'm taking a step further. Oh my gosh, I want to hear the mistakes. I want to hear the chaos, because that means we're on the edge of something big. And if I can have excitement around that, wow, where can I go with that? Yeah.
So,
really.
Ultimately, the job of a senior person in a business is to drive change, because businesses have to change to survive and to thrive. The models of businesses have to, on varying timescales, have to adapt and innovate to be successful. That pace of the need for change is accelerating. And what we see as well is, from a kind of people, HR, people leaders, they're saying that the workforce isn't ready for that speed of change. So that's an amazing disconnect, isn't it? In terms of the senior teams know that their job is to drive change, but the disconnect is their teams aren't ready. And so it is about, well, why is that? And ultimately your job as a leader is to know the ugly, to know what's going wrong, rather than just know the rosy. Because if you can fix it, then you can improve it. But that's hard, that can feel hard, because it feels that, as you said at the start, around the kind of the positive toxicity, if you like. But it is ultimately your job to know what's not right and to do something about it.
Yeah. And one of the highest level operating at a level 0 to 5, if you're a level 5 in SQ of a change agent, is you don't rush to quick fixes. You really uncover what's going on. That's level 5 change agent. Why isn't effective change agent? Why isn't effective? I should add that to the beginning of that. Not just change agent. Why isn't effective? Really good. All right, Ollie, I'm going to pick a card for you. And for everyone listening, this is a message for you from my Create Magic at Work journal prompt card deck that I authored for the workplace. And you can get it at createmagicatwork.net in the shop. And we're going to pick a theme for everyone today listening and a message, and then we'll give you a question on the fly that you can answer. Oh my gosh, we have not gotten this one I don't even know if ever on the show. So we got stability. Stability. I create stability in my life by consistently working towards my goals. This is kind of a cool thing that came up today because we're talking about feedback. And I think this is speaking to people being open to new ways, to listening to things they might not want to hear, to create stability in their companies and organizations. And maybe like even understanding that chaos and mistakes, stability actually comes from that, right? Because you get all of these innovative ideas that you can move forward with to keep your organization and the spirit of your company alive. So I create stability in my life by consistently working toward my goals. Ollie, what are some ways that people can do some inner work to ensure they're open to receive feedback for their company or in their life?
That's a great question. I think probably it's two things I would say is one, be comfortable with not knowing what the answer is. Your job is not to know the answer. Your job is to find the answer. And if you use feedback well, you find it from other people who probably know the answer better than you. So I would say that. Your job as a leader is not to know everything. I genuinely believe that. And also, I would say to take confidence in that being a leader of change is not about creating chaos. It's actually about, because if your business is moving forwards and learning things, and therefore we're not going to do that again, but you're continually moving forwards, that's stability. Whereas if you're standing still and it becomes the business doesn't move forward, doesn't innovate, that's chaos, because then you start to panic and make decisions without knowledge. So I would say those two things.
Wow, I love that. Stagnation is chaos was like a thought that came up with what you were sharing. So interesting. Yeah, thank you. Ollie, thank you so much for being a guest on the Create Magic at Work podcast. If anyone wants to connect with you or learn more about Rungway, how can they reach out and make a connection?
So you could either reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'm there as Ollie Lingwood-Craddock, or go to the Rungway website and rungway.com and get in touch with us through there. So one of those two channels. Yeah,
fun. So worth checking out, right? Yeah, thanks for sending some magic to everyone today with your wisdom and your insights. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been fantastic.
Hey everyone, Amy here. I am so excited to share this news with you. If you've been a longtime listener of the podcast, or even if you're new, you probably know that I weave spiritual intelligence through all of the episodes of Create Magic at Work. And we often talk about where you are at with making wise and compassionate decisions, what it looks like to be a wise and effective change agent. How do I put my ego aside and operate from my higher self? And if you've ever been curious as to what level you're sitting at in your life in those skills, I have some great news for you. I have loaded the SQ21 assessment on the Create Magic at Work website. This is something that only my private clients have access to in a coaching partnership with me. However, I have decided to give everyone access to the SQ21 assessment at a generous price, a small fee. You can take the assessment at createmagicatwork.net/shop. and you will get a printout that you can take with you the rest of your life as to where you're sitting, what level you're sitting at in the 21 skills of spiritual intelligence. This is an amazing opportunity. I encourage you to take advantage of it. Again, if you've ever been listening to all of the past episodes like, I wonder where I sit at making wise and compassionate decisions, or I wonder where I sit at being able to access my higher self, explore that curiosity and go to the website and take the assessment. I will also have that link dropped in the show notes so it's easily accessible to you here after the episode. And again, if you have any questions or if you just want to have a chat with me, I'm always available for a complimentary 30-minute coffee chat, so you can explore that as well. But get over to the website, take that assessment, and give yourself the gift of something that you can take with you for the rest of your life. Sending magic to you. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming back every week to listen to a new episode of Create Magic at Work and really helping to support and advocate for healthy leaders, workplaces, and lives for all of us. If you want any information on how to connect with me, click on the link in the show notes. You'll get access to all of the social media links for Create Magic at Work. Stay following along for more amazing episodes where we help you improve productivity and profitability in the workplace and decrease stress. Sending magic to everyone, and see you next time.